Hello everybody, welcome back to the Everton FM26 career mode, and apologies for the delay in this video, but we are back. And not just that, we're back home. I'm in Singapore in my office and it is great to be here. This is season 3 of the Everton save. It's going pretty well. So a quick recap then, we've improved Everton every year so far. Year on year we have got better and better. But apparently nobody's told the season preview. Last season we finished 7th, missing out on 6th by a single point, and yet the media reckon we're going backwards. They've got us down in 14th. 14th. Unbelievable. Season 3 actually started with a lovely surprise. Thanks to how the league finished and some domestic cup winners shuffling places around, we snuck into the European football. It is only the Europa Conference League, the 3rd tier trophy, but let's be real, for Everton, that's still pretty big. European nights at the new stadium, Hill Dickinson. That's what it's called. I was going to say Goodison. We take those. So as we headed into the season, we knew it was going to happen, but it still stung a little bit. James Tarkowski retired. He had faded out of the starting 11 in season 2, but in that first season, he was absolutely rock solid for us at the back. A real leader, and it was sad to see him go. But on the plus side, his wages are coming off the books, and it gave us some breathing room. But drama then really kicked off. Our resident drama merchant, Jake O'Brien, popped up again, saying he wants to leave the club. Classic. But this time, he's joined by arguably 2 of our more important players, Jarrad Branthwaite and Tyler Dibbling. That's 3 of our core players suddenly fancying something new. Perfect. On top of that, our centre-back situation was already pretty delicate. Tarkowski's retired, Rock Bashiri just isn't at the right level. A 50% tackle win ratio at the Premier League is just not it. Nathan Patterson never really fitted in as part of our back 3, and we're utilising him so well as the right wing-back. We're basically left with 4 proper centre-backs, and 2 of those, Branthwaite and O'Brien, both want out. And remember, we're playing a 3 at the back. Priority number 1 for this window, a centre-back. If the wantaways get their wish, we'd be going into a season with 3 at the back, with only 2 senior centre-halves. So with that in mind, we decided to build from what we already know. Jarrad Branthwaite. He is our benchmark. Last season, his numbers were around about 70% header win ratio, 76% tackles won, and 95% pass completion. In reality, that is pretty elite for a centre-back in the Premier League, so our logic was simple. If Branthwaite is our standard, who out there in this universe can match him or beat him? We cranked the filters up to the higher levels of those, 80 plus tackle success, 80% or better header win ratio, and a 90% or better pass completion. Across the leagues we've loaded, I didn't actually expect there to be that many people that could fit that with over 2,000 minutes in a season. And I was right, because we were left with 1 player, Isaac Toure of FC Lorient. A left-footed 6'8" Ivorian, uncapped at the moment and playing for a struggling Lorient side in Ligue 1, and absolutely smashed the numbers. A 94% tackle win ratio, 83% of his headers won, and 91% pass completion. Those are actually ridiculous stats for a defender in a team under pressure most weeks. And to make it even juicier, he'd actually asked to leave Lorient to join a better side. He wants a new challenge, and we need a defensive monster. It's a perfect fit. His profile screamed loves to defend. Phenomenal jumping reach, brilliant heading, and strong in the tackle. And in the challenge and physically his strength, he was an absolute monster. The price, we picked him up for £5 million, which is just ridiculous. £5 million for the defensively best statistical defender in the universe. That is absolutely bonkers. And to top it off, he's only on £37,000 a week. That's less than half of Tarkowski's old wage. That's what we like to call a data win. Next on the agenda was the midfield. Top of the chopping block, Carlos Alcaraz. I was really excited to use him in this save because his profile looks amazing. A proper all-round midfielder, good passer, and nice technique. But his performances, nowhere near it. Across the team, our average pass completion sits at around 91%. Alcaraz is sitting at 87%. It's not a disaster on paper, but in a side that keeps the ball pretty well, that does stand out. He scores roughly in line with his XG. His shot on target ratio is fine. He wins a decent chunk of tackles, but his header win ratio is 38%, which for someone in the centre of the pitch in this team is just not acceptable. The bigger issue is, compared to his teammates, he's miles off in almost every metric. His league average rating is 6.44 for a key central midfielder, and that's brutal. Onto the transfer list he went, and Fulham bailed us out. £24 million, so off to London he goes. That was the planned sale. Then we got an offer I really wasn't expecting. Merlin Roll was an absolute monster for us last season and probably our standout performer. He had attracted interest from Saudi Arabia, and normally that only ends one way. They slapped a £60 million bid in front of us, and that was that. £40 million profit in one season for a midfielder we paid £20 million for. As much as I loved him, that is silly money and you just have to say yes. So in the space of a short spell, we've bought in £84 million for two midfielders, which means it's time to go shopping data style. We went straight back in with data numbers. We identified three main candidates. Vinny Souza from Wolfsburg, more defensively minded. He won 91% of his tackles, 94% of his passes were complete, and 70% of his headers were won in the midfield. On paper, he looked like the ideal partner for Hayden Hackney in that deeper midfield role. He was calm, secure in possession, wins the ball, and keeps it simple. Simon Som from Fiorentina was probably the biggest rival to Vinny Souza. He's a defensive option in a tough league in Serie A. 78% of his tackles won, 93% pass completion, and 70% of his headers. Very solid in terms of his profile, and very solid given he's doing it proven in Serie A. Finally was Ismail Kone, Sassuolo, formerly of Watford. He would be used as a more advanced option. Wasn't as good in the tackles. Only 33% tackles won, but 89% pass completion and 46% of his headers was pretty good. He could be a defensive liability, but the creative numbers were exciting. He created 12 big chances and should have had around 5.8 assists. His teammates were letting him down and only turned that into 2 assists. So with all those three in mind, we weighed up transfer fees, wages and the squad roles they were after. In the end, Vinny Souza joined for £12.5 million as an important player on 65k a week, and Ismail Kone joined for £9 million as a rotation player on £55,000 a week. Both came in cheaper than Soam and are much cheaper in both fee and wages than Alcaraz and Roll. They joined in two very different dimensions. Souza to be the key man next to Hayden Hackney, and Kone as the impact option higher up the pitch when we needed goals or extra creativity. As we seem to have had every season, and especially in this season, there was more centre-back chaos. Just when we thought we'd sorted the back line, the Saudis came knocking again, this time for Victor Christiansen. Al Nazir put in a £45 million bid. His top-end market valuation was around £28 million. You just can't turn down £45 million for our defender in that situation. So with Christiansen sold and Tarkowski retired, that's two centre-backs out. We've bought in Isaac Toure, but we needed to go for another centre-back. This time, though, I was looking for a little bit of an extra element to it. Homegrown, if possible, to help us with our European squad registrations, and someone that was happy to be a squad rotation player or a backup. We started with the same filter system that we found Toure with, but obviously he was the only player that came up with that, so we reduced them just a little bit, and it came with two very interesting options. Matty Pollock was from Watford, played 41 league games and barely missed a minute. 91% tackles won, 79% of his headers won, and 92% pass completion. His profile as well showed great leadership and decision making, so profile-wise would be a lovely, lovely squad player. Aidan Heavens, while on the book at Man United, was on loan at Swansea. United wanted at least £30 million to sell, but they're happy to loan him out for first team football. At Swansea, in his 15 starts, he had produced 94% pass completion, 93% tackles won, and 81% of his headers won. That is insane numbers for a young centre-back. So with that in mind, we went for Aidan Heaven on loan. Low risk, high upside. 650k for the season, that is peanuts to us at Everton. He was happy to sit on the bench and step in as needed. If he hit the similar numbers in the Premier League, it would be one of the best value loans you'll ever see. But of course, FM did its thing. Against Osasuna, Valenti at centre-back, who had been a superb signing last year, tore his knee ligaments and was going to be out for 2 to 3 months. Suddenly, we're short at centre-back again, so we pulled the trigger and bought in Matty Pollock permanently from Watford. £33,000 a week, happy to be a backup. Not a superstar, but exactly the sort of depth option we needed. Next on the shopping list was a striker. Beto left on a free transfer to Fulham at the end of his contract, and with how we play, lots of crosses and lots of aerial duels, we absolutely needed a big striker. But it had to be someone that was big, tall, and happy to play backup Tieno Barry. Someone who could be a proper target man, hold that ball up, win the headers, and chip in with goals here and there. We lined up 4 main candidates. Garcia Pascual was the first from Cadiz. At 6'3", he fits the physical profile. In 34 starts for Cadiz in La Liga, he outperformed his XG by 2. He had around 1.3 shots on target per 90, with 43% of his shots on target. He won 50% of his headers and completed 88% of his passes. Good, solid numbers. He looked very, very tempting. Matteo Joseph from Leeds, at only 5'11", isn't your classic target man physically, but the data proved otherwise. He overperformed his XG by 6. He had 2.24 shots on target per 90. He won 52% of his headers, which is impressively impressive for his height. 88% pass completion, and playing in a high-energy gegenpressing Leeds side, he was winning 83% of his tackles. The downside though, he was out for 6 weeks with a torn groin, and for a backup striker we might need early in the season, that's not ideal. Joshua Zirkzee was at Man United but had a loan spell at Burnley. At 6'4", the profile looked promising. He had decent physicals, good technical attributes, but then we looked under the hood. Underperformed his XG by 1.3 and only had 0.68 shots on target per 90 minutes. 91% pass completion and 7 big chances created is nice, but 30% header win ratio is just not on. For a big man in our system, 30% headers won is a hard no. And then came the giant, 6'7", old school target man Sasa Kaladzic from Wolves. Jumping, heading, strength, all standout ability. Everything else was fine, but we don't need him to be messy. In 10 starts and 2 sub-appearances for Wolves, he was basically bang on his XG with an overperformance of 0.07, 46% of his shots on target with over 1 shot on target per 90, 89% pass completion. He only lost possession 4.66 times per 90 minutes, which is excellent for a striker who plays with his back to goal. And the big one, 60% headers won. For a striker against centre-backs, that is absolutely ludicrous. Honestly, it felt like Wolves just hadn't played to his strengths last season, so we decided that we would. We bought him in on loan for the season with an option to buy at 13.5 million, a low-risk way of getting a specialist profile that fits how we want to play as a backup to Tierno Barry. And the final area we needed cover, left wing-back. With Asnu now our first choice after selling Christiansen, we needed someone that was happy to be a backup, someone that was happy to potentially rotate in every so often, and someone who could cover elsewhere if needed. With that in mind, we narrowed it down to 4 options, all of whom, according to their agents, were happy to come in as backup or rotation players. Joshua Vertoud from Rayo Valenco. He's a Dutch left wing back with very good underlying numbers in La Liga. 91% tackles won, 95% passes completed, 79% of his headers won, and 50% of his crosses completed. I mean, it was 1 out of 2, but still. Rarely lost possession, strong at winning him back, and could also cover at centre-back. The next player was Thiago Hatta from STVV in the Jupiler Pro League in Belgium. 33 starts he had, and he had a 39% cross completion from 36 attempts. 84% pass completion, 90% tackles won, 63% of his headers won, and 16 key passes made him clearly a very good attacking outlet. Alan Maturo from Genoa, the scouts' favourite, but easily the most expensive. He could cover at centre-back and give us an option at left wing-back. 33% cross completion, 82% tackles won and 92% passes completed mean under the hood with the stats and the data, he was ideal. But he was a full Uruguayan international and had interest being shown from the bigger clubs around Italy. Genoa wanted a big fee and his agent was pushing for £80,000 to £100,000 a week. For rotation, absolutely not. We walked away from that deal. Topi Keskinen was our final left wing back pick from Aberdeen. He's a Finnish international, 29 league starts in the Scottish Premiership. He overperformed his XG by almost 4, hitting 3.92 overperformance, 32% of his cross completion, 89% passes completed and 82% tackles won. He was clearly playing below his level, but again, the fee of around 50 million and big wages put us off. So in the end, balancing it all up with transfer fees, wages, age and the role we wanted him to play in the squad, we went for Joshua Vertoud, £12.5 million, 57k a week, and he was happy to be a backup option with rotation football. He offers the flexibility and brings serious quality on the ball and in the air. It seemed like it was another smart deal that was led by this Moneyball approach. So after all of that, the summer transfer window, which I thought would be quite quiet, turned into a bit of a semi-rebuild. But I actually think it was a massive success. We only lost one crucial player in Merlin Roll, and we replaced him, Tarkowski, Beto and Christiansen with other players who fit our system, have excellent data, and reduced our wage bill overall. On top of that, we had a massive profit of £84.5 million. Of course, all of this is meaningless if they don't perform on the pitch. So let's go and see how we got on. As we move towards the halfway point in the season, there was more good news in the dressing room. Drama, 3 Rebels, Branthwaite, O'Brien and Dibbling were all happy to stay. Nice little U-turn for Everton, all of them happy to be involved with where we were going. On a personal level, we hit a big milestone, 100 games in management, which was away to HJK in the Europa Conference League. We celebrated in style, 5-0 demolition, 4 different goal scorers, total domination. The perfect way to mark game number 100. And it wasn't just club form that was improving and club news that was getting better. Adrian had been in such good form, he earned a call up to the Poland national team and scored his first international goal. You love to see it. By the time January rolled around, we'd had one more reason to laugh at that prediction of 14th. We were sitting 4th in the Premier League, playing some really good football. Now, we were slightly overperforming both our expected goals for and expected goals against, which inflated our league position above the data projected 9th, but honestly, I'm not complaining. So we went into January sitting 4th in the league thinking we don't really need to change anything. Of course, FM always has a way to spice things up. Man City started sniffing around Tyler Dibbling, who has been unreal this season. Thankfully, they never put a bid in enough to tempt us, but it was a remember of how good he has become. Denzo Cassius, after interest from PSV and Saudi Arabia, decided he wanted a big money move. He had been a rotation option behind Nathan Patterson, and I wasn't prepared to chuck wages at him to stay, so we went into data mode again to try and preempt his leaving of the club and find a new right wing back. We found 29-year-old Alejandro Pozzo at Almeria, 27% cross completion from 22 attempts, which was very respectable for a wing back in La Liga, 93% pass completion, 81% tackles won, and he did all of this for Almeria, who were basically at the bottom of La Liga. Very tidy numbers indeed. We didn't want to commit until we knew that Cassius was definitely off, but once a 33.5 million bid came in from Al Ittihad, we accepted it. Moments later, we confirmed Pozzo for 16.5 million on wages 10k a week lower than what we were paying Cassius. Classic Moneyball moves, and to top it all off, Pozzo scored on his debut. Lovely. However, once again, FM put in a bit of drama. Immediately after Pozzo scored in his debut, Tierno Barry got injured for 6 weeks with a sports hernia. We debated bringing in a short-term cover, but in the end decided to trust the squad depth that we had and ride it out without panic buying. Of course, the board were buzzing. We were up in the Champions League spaces. They were enjoying life, and so they offered us a new deal, which we happily signed, even though we know this could be the last season of the save. As we approached deadline day, it wasn't without its drama. Charlie Kelman came in asking for a mutual termination of his contract. It hadn't worked out for him, and sometimes that's football. Like, not every signing is going to be superb. Charlie Kelman cost us 1.5 million. We mutually terminated his contract. He left on a free. On the pitch, we're performing incredibly well, and the real story from here was 4th in the league and absolutely smashing the Europa Conference League. 5 wins, 1 draw. We finished 2nd in the league phase behind Bologna, who won all 6 from 6. And in the Carabao Cup, we quietly marched all the way to the final. We're going to be playing Liverpool, our biggest rivals, and our first final as Everton boss. Absolutely massive. We went into the Carabao Cup final as massive underdogs. Liverpool were the favourites. They had a few injuries, but still their squad was immense. We know how good they could be, and this was going to be hard. Early on, nerves kicked in. Nathan Patterson gave away a penalty and Vitinha converted it to make it 1-0 Liverpool. We grew into the game, we got Joy out wide, and after a dangerous cross from the flanks, Alexis McAllister turned the ball into his own net to make it 1-1. The game went to extra time, and I saw one of the best goals I think I've ever seen us score. We worked it from back to front, side to side. It was a beautiful team move, numerous passes, and it made it all the way up the pitch as Barry crossed to NDI to finish from close range. 2-1, and that turned out to be the winner. Our first trophy of the save against Liverpool. Could it be any sweeter? European football had been guaranteed again, which is absolutely massive for Everton. As the season wore on, we couldn't quite maintain that early pace that we set up in 4th, but we did go into the final day sitting in 4th. We just needed a point against Arsenal to secure Champions League football. We lost 3-0, they leapfrogged us, and we finished 5th. 1 point off the Champions League spots. Disappointing? Definitely. But if you look at the XG table, we actually finished roughly where we deserved, only 1 place above where the data predicted us. So in truth, 5th is still a fantastic season. Tactically, we didn't reinvent the wheel, we stuck with what had been working. We finished 12th in possession with our lowest average possession since the save began, and I'm absolutely fine with that. We just leaned into what we're good at: crosses, aerial duels and direct attacking football. We scored the most goals in the league, even more than Moneybags Man City, 6 more than them, in fact. We won the most headers in the league and had the second highest aerial duel success rate. We were direct, but we were also entertainers. Defensively was still the weaker side of the squad. We were conceding the 9th most goals in the league. But we're scoring for fun, and I can live with that. Think of Kevin Keegan's Newcastle. Chaos, goals, fun. That's what Everton were this season. But finishing 5th in the domestic season wasn't the end. We had one more game to go. We'd made it to the Europa Conference League final. Our opponents in the final? Bologna, the only team to finish above us in the league phase, unbeaten in the whole competition. In classic FM style, it threw up a curveball right before the game. Tierno Barry, once again our top scorer, picked up a groin strain and he's going to miss the final unless we do something we almost never do in Football Manager. I gave him injections to get through the game. Desperate times, desperate measures. The final itself was cagey, nerves all round. The players didn't seem sure whether to be excited or terrified. We did have a team meeting beforehand to settle everyone down and remind them what they had done to get to this final. 20 minutes in, Nathan Patterson, who had given away a penalty in the Carabao Cup final, went storming down the flank into the area and won us a penalty. Up stepped Tierno Barry, thank God for injections because he buried it 1-0. Basically, nothing happened. The match engine went to sleep. No real highlights. Both sides created very little. We shut up the shop for the final few minutes, dropped deep and saw it out. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. Everton can be classed as European champions. That with a Carabao Cup win, it's a cup double for Everton in 2027. And after all of that, the recognition rolled in for the players. We were mentioned among the top English managers for what we had done with Everton. The cup double, a European trophy, 5th in the league, huge progress in 3 seasons. Tyler Dibbling hoovered up the European Conference League awards, being awarded Player of the Season, Young Player of the Season and the top goal scorer. But weirdly, he didn't make the team of the season, but that did include 7 other Everton players: Pickford, Patterson, Branthwaite, Pollock, Vertude, Adrian and Barry. That is FM logic at its finest. If we look at the team stats in terms of shots and goals and overperformance, we really were lethal in front of goal. Iliman Ndiaye, 59% of his shots on target. He overperformed his XG by 8.38. Tierno Barry overperformed his XG by 8.29 and scored 30 goals in all competitions, which was a new Everton record. Tyler Dibbling scored 25 goals and overperformed his XG by 6.68, and Adrian scored 21 goals and overperformed his XG by 3.3. 4 players in this Everton squad have scored 15 or more goals in all competitions. We should also have a shout out to Sasa Kalajic. On loan from Wolves, his 10 goals across all competitions as a backup striker really did help. We were absolutely relentless in front of goal this season. But of course, we finish these videos by looking at how our new signings got on. Alejandro Pozzo at right wing back, 4 league starts and 14 sub appearances since joining in January, showed that he was a good rotation and backup offer for Patterson. 24% cross completion, hitting almost 1 in 4 is very strong. 90% pass completion, 90% tackles won, and 89% of his shots on target. He created 8 chances for his teammates. He was cheaper and lower on wages than Cassius. That is a massive win. Joshua Hatoud at left wing back, 16 league starts, 6 European games, around 25% cross completion. He hit 105 attempts and completed 27 of them. 14 chances created, 86% pass completion and 67% of his tackles won. Defensively, he could improve a little bit, but his crossing was so good, you don't really care. As a rotational left wing back who can change games with his delivery, he was excellent. We've touched on him before, but Sasa Kalajic, 7 league starts, 15 off the bench. He overperformed his XG by 0.9. He won 61% of his headers and had an 89% pass completion. For an emergency target man, he was more than adequate. I'd argue that if we're doing this into Season 4 for £13 million, he could be an option worth activating, but that would depend on who else is available with similar data. Vinny Souza in holding midfield has brought in to be our role replacement in terms of importance, maybe not in style. He had 33 league starts with 4 sub-appearances. He missed just 1 league game all season, and that proved absolutely vital. He had 90% pass completion, 76% of his tackles won, and 54% of his headers were won. He lost the ball fewer than 8 times per 90 minutes. He's exactly what we wanted from our screening midfielder. He was solid on the ball, strong in the challenge, and rarely wasteful. He turned out to be pretty immense. Ishmael Koney, he was joined with him in central midfield as a new signing, and it was used as expected, rotation and backup and more advanced. 8 league starts, 23 sub appearances, an 89% pass completion, 71% of his tackles won and 48% of his headers won. Not spectacular, but exactly what we needed from him. He won the ball, kept it moving and supported the more attacking players. As a squad player, I think that's a success. Matty Pollock from Watford was probably the one signing I was unsure about when we signed him. But when he was called upon, he won 89% of his tackles, 94% of his passes were completed, and he won 69% of his headers. It was solid but not spectacular. That's exactly what you want, I think, from a backup centre-back who you signed from Watford. He did his job, absolutely no fuss. And finally, Aidan Heaven, centre-back on loan from Man United. He ended up starting far more than I initially planned, but this was partly due to Valente's injury at the beginning of the season, and we were partly phasing out O'Brien towards the end of the season. We actually mainly used him as the centre of the back three to make use of his quality on the ball. He had 93% pass completion, 88% of his headers that he challenged for in the league he won, which is absolutely insane. His tackle success rate was only 58%, and that is a bit disappointing. But here's the thing, the tackles he did win really mattered. He racked up a lot of key tackles. You can see there's potential there, and he could genuinely become a brilliant ball-playing defender in FM26. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he develops in other saves. So it brings us to the big question. Is this the end of the series? We've finished 5th in the Premier League, we've won the Carabao Cup, we've won the Europa Conference League, and we've turned Everton into a direct but entertaining and high-scoring side. We've made a massive transfer profit while improving the squad, and we've probably kept the wage budget, I'd say, at a similar level throughout this save. But because of the league coefficients, I think 5th place is going to be enough to qualify for the Champions League next season. So do we carry on? And that's where you guys come in. If we do get Champions League football, I'll put a vote in the community tab on the channel, and you can decide if we do one more season or we wrap up the save here as European Conference champions and we leave it there and move on to another save. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, vote in the poll, and tell me who's your favourite signing throughout this save so far, who surprised you the most, and which player would you build around if we did do Season 4. Thanks for sticking with the series and for the delay on this episode. Thank you for bearing with it. From Singapore and with Everton as European champions, which we can definitely call them that now, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.